Deputy Mayor Van Ness.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Sperry.
Here.
Councilmember Curtis.
Present.
Councilmember Herbig.
Here.
Councilmember Danuski.
Here.
If you will please rise and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. If there are no objections, the agenda will stand approved as written. I would just like to just take 1 second, and I know I'm gonna mispronounce this, but I want to just recognize Emilio Gerardo from Puerto Montt in Chile.
Wow.
He's here visiting family, and he's a candidate for mayor in his city. So I just wanted to thank him for coming and saying hello. All right, next item on the agenda then is a couple of presentations. And Cindy, are you going to do a little PowerPoint, or am I'm kicking this off?
Oh, I guess we need our little things, don't we? Evidently, we're still on.
Do I can certain do the presentation. I was going to wait for that slide to come up, but it's up there. Well, I'm hearing this noise behind me, and so I thought, well, the screen was coming down. All right. So anyway, Platinum Community Event Sponsor. We're really fortunate in that we do have some businesses that really care about our city. And this past year in 2015, Spencer 68 has really stepped up and been involved in the community, and we really appreciate that. They were a platinum level sponsor at a number of community events, and also the presenting sponsor for the 2015 Kenmore Summer Concert Series. You know that every year we have these 6 wonderful concerts up in St. Edward's State Park, and we're very, very fortunate to have those, and I think we're very fortunate to have Spencer 68 involved the way they are. And Daniela Tobar is here from Spencer 68 Apartments and Lofts to accept this award.
Now it's on. There we go. So thank you, Council, for this opportunity. I'd like to bring to your attention some wonderful volunteers that we have in our community and that are making a difference and a big impact in Kenmore every day. There's 3 teams we are going to be introducing you to and recognizing today. The first one will be Kenmore Events Team. We also have the Park Stewards that have been helping with the log boom restoration project. And then we'll wrap this up with recognizing some wonderful high school students from Inglemore High School that have been working on a year-long internship here at the city of Kenmore. First of all, I'd like to talk about the growth that our volunteer program has been going through. Each year we've been climbing. You can see the line going up and off the chart. We have almost over 600 volunteers in our volunteer system right now, data system, and each one of those contribute in different ways. But yeah, we've now hit about 2,800 hours of volunteer service here in Kenmore in a variety of ways. One great big team we have that is just energetic, we would not be able to do some of the expansion of our special events that we have over the year, and that is our KET team, which stands for Kenmore Events Team. Over 290 hours were logged by this team to help out with the fireworks show, the summer concert series, Kenmore Play Day, and of course a Christmas tree lighting festival as well. They take different parts of this event, vendor coordination, volunteer coordination, setup and takedown, event information, booths, and so forth to help this event run, and then that allows me to do that troubleshooting and broader coordination that's needed. Right now, I'd like to recognize those KET members that are here in the audience. Some could not be here today. Cindy Rutstein's one, and I think Teresa did get here. Oh, Cindy is here. Sorry, Cindy is here. Sorry. So with Lonnie Hunt, Lindsay Hunt, Justin Shelton, Nikki Delgado, Nikki Pradden, and Nisha Pradden, and Teresa Schuler and Cindy Rutstein come up. And thank you, KET team. Thank you, KET team. You guys are awesome.
They are.
The next group I'd like to recognize is our park stewards. We have native plant stewards, and then we have park stewards. The stewards we're recognizing tonight are the ones that have been helping with the Log Boom Park Restoration Project. Over 156 hours have been logged on this project. Over 556 plants were planted, and I don't know how many truckloads of debris were hauled out. So lots of work has been done there, a lot of digging in the dirt and hard work happened there. This is funded by the King Conservation District, and training was provided by Washington Native Plant Society. And yeah, we're just very proud of this group and all that they've accomplished. The group that this represents is Carl Golden, Rick Hansen, Sarah Park, Nancy Bowen Pope, Lisa Wood, Deborah Shrebnick, and Keir Fisher. I think tonight we just have Lisa and Deborah here. So if they could come forward, we'll go ahead and present their certificates now. And our final presentation tonight is for two seniors from Inglemoor High School. Woohoo! They both have contributed an incredible amount of time and effort and learned a lot through their process. Over 354 hours have been contributed by these two. They would work 2 hours a week, typically helping in the office, and then, of course, implementing at events as well. So really a great opportunity for these two students who are just amazing students that give me great hope for our future. Nikki Delgado did the events and sponsorship internship, and Nisha Pradden did the volunteer assistant position of the internship for that. So both girls did a great job, and I'd like to invite them now to come up and tell you a little bit about their experience here at City Hall.
Good evening, my name is Nikki Delgado.
And I'm Nisha Pradhan, and we've been working as the high school interns at City Hall for the past year under Cindy Shelton.
Our first major event was the Volunteer Appreciation in February 2015. We were both very nervous about our first event, but really enjoyed it and looked forward to putting on the other Kenmore community events.
Throughout the rest of the year, we helped with many other events like the 4th of July fireworks show, the summer concert series, Kenmore Playdate, the Christmas tree lighting, and various park cleanups.
I worked as the events marketing and sponsorship intern. I have created banners, advertisements, flyers, posters, and press releases for various events with help from the Public Information Officer, Leslie Harris. Along with events marketing, I have recruited sponsors, drafted sponsorship agreements, and created sponsorship thank you letters. One highlight of my internship was when I went to the Waterfront Activities Fair last May to take pictures of the event and interview Kenmore citizens. It was nerve-wracking for me to go up to different people to ask them questions, but I felt very proud when my news article was published in the Kenmore Reporter. Kenmore Playdate was also a major event for me. I created the Passport to Play that included the day's schedule and the names of the activity booths around at Rhododendron Park. Each child received a passport to play, and once the children earned a specific number of stickers, they came to the event information tent where I gave them prizes. I've had a lot of fun over the past year, and I have learned how to market events effectively, how to present myself in a professional setting, and I've gained confidence that will help me prosper in my future.
I worked as the volunteer coordination intern. In this position, I learned how to recruit, schedule, train, and manage event volunteers for special city events by preparing and distributing recruitment materials and communicating with churches, IHS clubs, and other organizations. In addition, I became familiar with Volgistics, a widely used volunteer management software system that allowed me to recruit and remind volunteers about upcoming city events. I now know about city volunteer procedures and how much planning and preparation goes into even the smallest events. Everything I learned from the start of the internship led up to me taking the lead on scheduling and running volunteer management at the 2015 Christmas tree lighting. At this event, I got the full experience of the stress and the fun in volunteer management. Throughout the year, I have learned a lot about volunteer coordination, how to plan effectively, and how to troubleshoot problems quickly. And I've gained valuable communication skills that will help me be successful in college and throughout my career.
Nisha and I have had a wonderful year working here at City Hall. We have gained more knowledge about city governments and have had an amazing time creating a better Kenmore community.
We have met so many wonderful people who have taught us so much. It's crazy to think that the first city event we volunteered at together was just over a year ago at the Christmas tree lighting in 2014. We are so sad that our internships have come to an end, but we are so grateful for the amazing opportunity we had to serve our community.
Thank you.
You can see why they did such a great job. And by the way, if you don't want it to end, I'm more than happy to continue it for you.
You're too. Yeah, those are amazing skills.
Get out in all these different events and I think the whole council is so proud of our high school students and the kids, and these two just truly exemplify, I think, what Kenmore stands for. They're just outstanding, and as Cindy said, when you see young people like this, you know the future is going to be good. And we truly, truly thank you. And the rest of the volunteers that we recognize tonight, we see them all over. Deborah Shrebnick, for instance, she's a park steward down at Logboom Park, but she also serves on our planning commission. the people are just very, very active in our community, and I think we're really fortunate to have this quality of people in our community. And one other thing I want to say while I've got the opportunity is we've been very fortunate for the last few years. We have started with no volunteer program to speak of, and now we have over 600. We started with a play day. I can remember when Stacy Danuski and I started this Playful City thing and the play days. I mean, we had 10, 15 kids.
It was raining really hard, though.
I know it was raining really hard, but I'm sorry, we would have never brought in 600 or 700 kids like Cindy has done. Cindy is truly amazing. She really is. And before I go any further, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm glad that we had this presentation tonight. It was good timing because Cindy will be leaving us. It makes me so sad. Yeah, we've had Cindy as a part of our city for a little over 3 years, and she's going to another close by city that made her an offer she couldn't refuse. So we really wish you well in that, but we're also really sad because you've done so much, and we know that if you stayed here, you could keep doing so many wonderful things. But just to give a little recap about Cindy Shelton, it was about 3 years ago that the City Council created this part-time position, and may I emphasize that Cindy has been a part-time employee, and she's been doing all this stuff. But we saw an unmet need or an untapped resource in our community, and being able to leverage and tap into all the volunteer resources in our community. So with that in mind, we created the position and recruited Cindy, and we were really lucky to get her, especially given all of her experience she had had in the past. But if you look up here at this graph, you can see that this is the impact she and Leslie Harris and others have had on volunteer hours in the city. I would have been impressed if she maybe would have quadrupled the hours of volunteerism in the city, but this is nearly 10 times the amount that we used to have. So what does that mean to our community? That puts a value on what's happened in our city that you just can't assign a dollar figure to. I could perhaps maybe calculate 2,800 hours times some hourly rate and come up with some number of resources and dollar figure that she's leveraged for the city, but it goes way beyond that. These two high school students that just spoke, can you put a dollar figure on their experience? You can't. And so that's what I love about this graph. This happens to be my most favorite graph in the entire city. So I love this. But just to recap some of the things that Cindy has helped do under Leslie's leadership is launching the Kenmore events team, the Park Steward Program, the Native Plant Steward Program, the High School Internship Program, the North Shore School District Adult Transition Partnership, partnerships with businesses, churches, and other organizations for Adopt a Street, Adopt a Park, and other activities and events. And of course, she puts on the 4th of July fireworks show, summer concert series, Kenmore Play Day, and Christmas tree lighting festival. And one more thing about what I've loved about what Cindy has done is she's not just recruited and managed volunteers, she's recruited and trained volunteers who recruit and train and manage other volunteers. Mm-hmm. And that's what's been really amazing. She has really leveraged this wonderful resource in our community. And I'm so grateful for that. And I don't know how we're going to replace you. We're going to try, but I doubt we're going to be able to do that exactly. But we wish you well, Cindy. Thanks so much.
You will always be remembered around here very fondly, I'll tell you that. Next item on the agenda, this is in the second reiteration of our planning commission, we picked 7 really great people, and a couple have left, but the co-chair is her time is up. She's decided that she needs to move on. She's a very, very active lady. She's very active at DigiPen and certainly on the east side here. And I want to take this opportunity to recognize our outgoing Planning Commission member, Angela Kugler. The Commission will miss her. We really appreciate the service that she's given us from 2013 to 2015. She's going to be missed, but we did want to get that, and we do have a certificate here for her, but unfortunately, the business and her life the way it is, she can't make it, so we did want to officially recognize her, and we will make sure she gets this certificate. Next item on the agenda, citizen comments. This is an opportunity for you to express your views on issues that are important to you in the community. And we ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. People work very hard to get their message across in 3 minutes, and we would ask that you would respect those efforts and keep your comments to 3 minutes. If a response can be given, the city will be in touch with you within a couple of weeks, as soon as they certainly possibly can. This is not a time for two-way dialogue or conversation. It's for you to state what your concerns are. So will the clerk please call the first person?
Daniela Tobar. All right. Jeff Miller? Katrina? No? Okay. Patrick E. O'Brien.
Good evening. Patrick O'Brien, 6330 Northeast 181st Street. I'd like to start off with the House Bill 2385 that Jerry Paulette has written. It has to do with the monitoring of the activities at the Kenmore Industrial Park. And Janet Hayes and Ann Payne, Ann Hurst, myself, and Mayor Baker all spoke in favor of that. What was shocking is that the entity that we've been trying to persuade to go forward with citations and violations. The third speaker for the asphalt, it was the Asphalt Association, it was the representative from CIMEX, and then the last person was actually the head of the Puget Sound Clean Air, spoke for them in opposition to Jerry Paulette's bill. And I find that shocking, but that shows kind of the uphill battle that the citizens have had on this issue. If the regulatory agency you're supposed to be reporting odor violations to is basically a parrot of the industry, that was a revelation. So here's some ideas. I've been sending complaints, calling 911 because, of course, nobody's here at City Hall at 4 o'clock in the morning when the activity starts, and the trucks are going and they drop about a ton of gravel into some sort of a reactor to get everything going. And there's nothing like, it's even better than a rooster. Let me tell you, it's a ton of rock. So where's the risk assessment? Where's the health assessment? Where's the monitoring reports? How does the public know of any health risks? We see chemical feed trucks go in there, big stainless steel rigs. They unload chemicals. Nobody's tracking that. Nobody knows what the output of that is. Nobody knows how many tons of pollutants are going in the air. Who do we have on city staff to analyze that sort of data? We have nobody with that sort of science. So make it a state or a county enforcement. would be a good thing, but the city could certainly start the ball rolling by doing what Mayor Baker has asked for, and let's start the monitoring of those stacks. So how do we stop the activity? We stop the activity by, number one, admitting that it's a health risk and it's not an odor issue. You cannot melt that much asphalt and tar and have it unfiltered, unbagged, untested, going in the lungs of the citizens 100 meters away and say, that's not affecting health. I got news for you. You all know it. I know it. It does affect the health of the citizens. So there are city codes, there are state codes, and there are federal codes. They keep saying that this is a grandfathered process. They've been there forever, and they hope to remain there forever. But that only applies if you're talking about an odor issue, not a health issue. Bhopal, India could have been solved had somebody said, hey, you know, this chemical plant might turn out to be dangerous for the residents. And you know what? It was. We have a health risk here. We don't have an odor violation. So, other things that are looking like possibilities, I'll be done. I went down to Olympia with you, so we spent hours, and I think this is an important message since CIMEX is here as well.
Limit 3, please.
Yeah, I'm getting there. The old 520 bridge is going to be broken down, and we've heard that it's pointed at Kenmore. But on that bridge, you've got 50 years of asbestos brake pads and other things that are entrained in that road surface. And if you bring that road surface here to be broken down for 4 years in Kenmore, you're going to have that go into that open flash reactor, and asbestos will be in the steam that's coming off that plant. And the noise from breaking down that big of a structure for 4 years will absolutely make the real estate and the lifestyle here in Kenmore miserable. So I'll just wrap it up. I have all kinds of more fun things to say, but my time is limited. There are people here that are willing to work with the city, and there are people in the state and federal systems ready to do what's necessary to have these plants move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Robert Burns.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Robert Burns. I'm the plant manager at Cal Portland Concrete Plant, located at 6423 Northeast 175th Street here in Kenmore. I would like to thank the council for allowing some extra time to review and consider the proposed ordinance 150414, establishing a business and occupation tax on 2 businesses in the city of Kenmore. As one of those businesses, Cal Portland urges a no vote on ordinance 150414. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Burns.
Elizabeth Mooney.
Hi, Elizabeth Mooney, 5934 Northeast 201st Street, Kenmore. I just want to talk about 2 legal issues. One has to do with the asphalt fumes and associated activities at our shoreline from the folks over on the Lake Point, Kenmore Industrial Park, CMEX, Cal Portland, Glacier, whatever you want to call that, that's been there forever. It's unethical, in my opinion, and it's legal. And you guys have had this ordinance 150414 to think about for 2 weeks, is my understanding. I'm sorry I didn't get to the meeting a couple weeks ago, but you've got to pass it. It is not going to get rid of them. It's not going to make them stop poisoning the people, including Ostrom's. My friend down there has nodules in her lungs, and she sucks it up and puts on her inhaler. It's increased since 2012 when we started taking massive numbers of pictures and calling Puget Sound Clean Air Agency to no avail. I cannot believe that Puget Sound Clean Air Agency was there to support them. It's just awful. But I have to say, thank you so much to the City of Kenmore. And Mayor Baker, thank you very much for going down to Olympia. That was absolutely outstanding. Thank you to City of Kenmore, all of you, for supporting that. That was like the first ray of hope that will get rid of polluting, poisoning asphalt fumes. The companies are rich enough, and we have gone to them and talked to them, and I like the people who are here, but the companies need to have their feet, you know what I mean? They need to be held accountable because they are rich enough, and we have asked them to monitor their emissions. And that is why we are so happy that you went down to support Jerry Paulette's and Jessen Farrell's House bill. Thank you so much for being there. And as a council here in the city, please, unanimously, you have to begin the process of making them responsible for poisoning this side of the city. It's just not right. There are children that suck it up. The bicyclers suck it up. We had a run that had to go towards Lake Forest Park a couple years ago just because of the asphalt fumes. And they begin so early that we can't even call you. Anyway, thank you very much, though, for going to Olympia. And please vote unanimously to approve Ordinance 150414. And to the extent that I can help by talking with them about becoming greener companies, I'm happy to help as president of People for Environmentally Responsible Kenmore. And come to our meeting if you want to next Sunday at Third Place Books at noon.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney.
Noel Barnett.
Good evening. Noel Barnett with Cimex, 420 Southwest 11th Avenue in Canby. Here just to comment on the B&O tax that's proposed. First off, I want to start by saying thank you again for extending the comment period last week to give us an opportunity to look at it a little bit closer. At this point, all we want to do is just comment on the fact that we are in opposition of the proposed B&O tax. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett.
Carol Baker.
Hi, I'm Carol Baker. I live at 6365 Northeast 194th Street here in Kenmore, and I would like to wear my citizen hat, even though I am part of the Planning Commission. I wanted to just highlight some of the reasons why one of our outgoing planning commissioners, who the council and Mayor Baker did acknowledge tonight, but I wanted to expand a little bit about why she is a valuable player and has served our city so well. I am a new member of the Planning Commission. I've passed my first orbit around the sun on the Planning Commission, and it's been a wonderful experience. I can say that part of it is because of Angela. She brought a quality of leadership that all of the commissioners have that were experienced for the new people like me. But one of the things I really appreciated about Angela is that she was a volunteer in the true sense of the word. She wasn't there for her own self, you know, promoting her own personal agenda or her own personal views. She was really there to represent our city as a whole. And the way she did that is she helped to create a culture of inclusiveness. She recognized that there were opportunities in the docket items that were passed to us from the City Council to take a look at some issues that needed attention. Obviously, you wouldn't have passed them to us if they didn't. But she really recognized each item as an opportunity to enhance our city. She did that by using these terms. She wanted to be a catalyst for change. She wanted to be responsible to the community at large. She wanted to create something that was sustainable. And we've kind of heard about that a little bit tonight, that whatever actions we could recommend to our council would be repeatable and they would be multipliable. And I think in terms of what our city represents, that's what we're striving to do, is to create a city where we can grow in a way that enhances all of its citizens. And again, the word inclusiveness. we've grown up in an era where we like to talk about diversity, and that's important for us to acknowledge. But I think the thing I liked about Angela is she really used that word often. She would ask questions that would cause us to pause and think about how can we be inclusive. In these ordinance recommendations, will all people be represented? And are we really covering all the bases? And I just appreciated that about her. The last one is stewardship. She values people above anything else, and she also values the process. So I think those are great things to acknowledge her for. I'd like to make a recommendation that the city staff and the council would consider sponsoring or nominating citizens or people that you're aware of in our community to Leadership East Side to participate in that training program. One of the reasons I would recommend that is Angela actually sits on the board of that organization, having come up through the ranks, and it would be really wonderful if we were able to sponsor somebody or at least nominate somebody from our community that would benefit from that program. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Baker.
John Steinbrück.
My name is John Steinbrück. I've lived here as a resident for 18 years. I belong to the Englewood East Mobile Homeowners Association.
Could you go to the podium, sir? Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry. My name is John Steinbrück. I've been a resident in this town for 18 years. I'm on the board of Englewood East Mobile Homeowners Association. And rethinking...
Could you state your address too, please?
7301 Northeast 175th Street.
Thank you.
Yes. And I had come here with some other ideas, but now that I see some of the things that have been discussed, I realize that I have to go back to North Shore Water District because the Homeowners Association has a 3-year ongoing investigation of the owners of the mobile home park that I'm in. They were thrown out of Nevada. There's 7 corporations were thrown out by the Attorney General. They brought all those practices here. And I shouldn't say any more. But we're investigating things, and I'm thinking about a permitting process which they absolutely refuse to follow. That's on record. In North Shore Water District, it says they are the worst commercial account that they have ever had in this city. So I thought the city should know a little more about that because there's a blind eye to code in the past. There has been, and I suppose it might be the North Shore Water District, but we're investigating. We're going to find out. This is ongoing now for 3 years. Thank you for your ear.
Thank you, Mr. Steinbrück.
Mario M.
Just signing in. Define Mormon Brothers. I just signed in.
Oh, you don't want to give comments? Okay. Ellen Garvins.
Hello. I'm here. I live at 19518 67th Avenue Northeast. I'm here with my husband, Jim.
And your name again? I'm sorry.
Ellen Garvins.
Thank you.
And we're here to voice our support. We've lived here 21 years. We're here to voice our support for the development of St. Edward's Park, the monastery, in an effort to save a building we see as culturally, historically, and artistically, architecturally important to Kenmore. We would like to see businesses thrive in Kenmore. I understand that this is the forum to voice our support for the development of it. We would hate to see a cultural landmark like that disintegrate any further. You can see that it is, and understanding that it would cost a lot of money to fix it up. So my husband and I, along with dozens of other acquaintances and friends of ours, would just like to reiterate how important that is and how we would really love to see development happen there. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jim Fallon. That's the end of the signage sheet.
Anybody else wishing to be heard? Is there anybody else wishing to be heard?
I have a question. Is there going to be a meeting with...
Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. Mr. O'Brien, Ms. Mooney, thank you for your comments. We are very much in support. Ms. Hayes, I thought you might have something to say too, but we appreciate your being down in Olympia and finding out what it's like down there. I will be down there tomorrow and Wednesday, and then the week after, and we're lending all the support we can to Representative Paulette and Representative Farrell's bill. And I certainly will be talking to as many people as I can get to listen to me about that, amongst other things.
Your Honor, can
yes.
I add one more thing to this topic? Mr. O'Brien brought to my attention last week what we're hearing about the 520 bridge coming to Kenmore, the old bridge coming to Kenmore and being recycled in Kenmore. That sparked my interest, and I checked with one of my department heads today about it, and he's hearing that might be a possibility, and we're concerned about that, and we are checking to see whether such an activity is allowed under their existing permit or is allowed at all, given the non-conforming use that heavy industrial is now. So stay tuned on that, but we are looking into that, and I appreciate him bringing that to our attention.
Thank you. Thank you. So that is definitely on our radar also. Ms. Baker, thank you very much for your comments. And I'm certainly aware of Angela and her involvement in Leadership Eastside. That organization escaped my mind. But in any event, yes, I know I've been nominated to that, and I'm looking seriously at trying to attend. But be that as it may, thank you very much for your comments on Angela. She is certainly appreciated in this community. Mr. Steinbrook, thank you for your comments. If you need to get a hold of North Shore Utility District, then I think that's who you should be talking with. Mrs. Garvin's, February 9th, right here in Kenmore City Hall. State Parks will be here. St. Ed's is the topic of conversation. Also, this Thursday, January 28th at 11 in the morning. That is a topic of conversation at Edmonds Community College over in Edmonds. So you're also welcome there. That is a State Parks meeting. And the one on the 9th here in City Hall will be at 7 o'clock in the evening, or 6:30 in the evening.
6:30.
6:30 in the evening.
And
so, yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add that that is a public hearing
that is,
as
yes.
well as information.
So certainly you are encouraged to be there, and your friends that are also have an opinion on this are encouraged to be there. So thank you all very much for your comments, and we appreciate hearing from you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
So we heard, I think, Councilmember Herbig move. Oh, Councilmember Curtis move, and I heard
I can second.
Councilmember Danuski second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda stands approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda, to adopt ordinance number 15-0414, establishing a business and occupation tax on heavy manufacturing. Mrs. Gregory.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight is the second presentation of Ordinance 15-0414, which would establish a business and occupation tax on heavy manufacturing in the city. Before I proceed, I need to point out that there is a typo in the ordinance that was just discovered today. On page 12, section 3.75050A, the sentence reads, quote, except as provided in subsection, the sentence should read, except as provided in subsection B of this section, not subsection 2. So there's a 2 where there needs to be a B, and we will correct that before signatures are obtained on the ordinance. But I wanted to point that out for your information. So on March 15, 2015, the City Council directed that staff pursue instituting a B&O tax on heavy industries within Kenmore as regulated under RCW 35A 82020. A public hearing was held on this subject 2 weeks ago, which was January 11th. Ordinance 15-0414 would establish such a tax and create a new Chapter 3.75 in the Kenmore Municipal Code. This ordinance was developed under the State of Washington's required model ordinance for cities, which became effective in 2013. Currently, 41 of 281 cities in Washington have a B&O tax. Under the Kenmore ordinance, heavy manufacturing as defined by the code would be taxed. Retail, services, and wholesale activities would not be subject to the tax. The statutory tax rate is 0.2% applied to the value of the products manufactured in the city of Kenmore, with the first $20,000 of gross receipts exempt. The effective date of the tax would be April 1st, 2016, and an administrative ordinance setting forth the reporting requirements and other criteria will be brought to the City Council for approval in late February or early March. This concludes my remarks. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Hearing none.
Councilmember Sperry has one.
I'm going to ask a question I probably know the answer to, but I think it'd be good to clarify.
Yeah, Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you. Can you, I know with the sales tax, with the new delivery base sales tax, that sales tax is only collected at the point of delivery. So obviously not all of the products, the asphalt and the concrete manufactured in the city are delivered to be used in the city. So how does this B&O tax work? Would it also be based on delivery, or would it be based on the value of the products manufactured in the city?
The second, it would be based on the value of the products manufactured in the city, regardless of the fact that they may be delivered outside the city.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor.
The way I understand this applies to two businesses within the city. If the bridge demolition comes to the city and is done by another business other than the two that it's applied to, will this ordinance apply to that as well? I would think bridge sections are pretty heavy industry.
If there's another manufacturer in the city?
If a contractor comes in to do that within the city.
If they were to meet the definition of heavy manufacturing as defined in the code, they would be subject to it.
Okay.
But I don't know that the code allows for additional heavy manufacturing in the city, but that's outside my understanding.
It depends how it's defined in the code, because we're unmanufacturing a bridge. But it's heavy. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's heavy unmanufactured.
I'm sorry, this would take some additional research on my part.
I'm just curious whether this would include that as well.
Hey, Mr. Mayor.
I don't know.
Yeah, Councilmember Smith.
I do have a question on that. So since that's a state project, and I realize that they have different taxing regulations, how would that impact this since the state runs the project?
I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. This was the first that I've heard of the unmanufacturing occurring in the city, or the demolition, or however you phrase it. I'd have to do some research to understand how that might affect us if another entity took that on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so we have had a public hearing on this. We had this public hearing last week. And I guess now, if there are no further questions, the chair will entertain a motion to adopt ordinance number 15-0414, establishing a business and occupation tax on heavy manufacturing in the city.
So moved.
Moved and
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I would make one comment regarding what is manufacturing or not. If you look at on page 6 of the ordinance, it actually discusses what heavy manufacturing is, and it refers to it as engaged in the mechanical, physical, or chemical transformation of materials. So it doesn't actually say you have to manufacture a product. So I realize it's a little off topic, but I think it's relevant for the discussion.
That could be unmanufactured too.
Yes, that's correct.
Interesting. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Hearing none. The clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sperry?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. All right. Next item on the agenda is, hang on, let me get back to it. Town Green Art, artist confirmation, contract approval, and appropriation of funds. Mr. Carlinzy and Mr. Jernigan.
Hey.
Oh, and Miss Admin, where is your partner? Your cohort, your other artist? Is she down in San Francisco?
No, this is in the committee.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am here with Peter Ryquam, public artist, and with Stacy Admin, local Kenmore artist and member of the artist selection panel for this project. And I'm here to give you an update on the Town Green project, or the Town Green Art project, and as well I will be seeking council approval for the recommended artist, Peter Ryquam, as well as an approval for the design contract. So before anything else, I want to go through a little bit the preparation that went into this Town Green Art project. First of all, there was a lot of consultation with the city manager and through the city manager with you in individual one-on-ones to determine what it is that we expected out of this art project and kind of what scope we were looking at. And we came up with 3 artwork expectations that were for this sculpture to be iconic and memorable, to connect to Kenmore, and to make people smile. And as far as kind of a scope for the project, we came up with a budget of $120,000. And with this in hand, we created a call to artists, worked closely with some key members of city staff who were very helpful, and then also consulted with some very helpful staff at For Culture who gave some recommendation on how to approach this project, how to set it up, how to create a call to artists. So that was, we had some expertise in this area to help us out in this project. So as far as getting the call out, once we had written this call, which was a request for qualifications for artists, we tried to get it out as broadly as we could. Within the Pacific Northwest, that was kind of the range we'd put on it geographically. We put it on For Culture's website, which then puts it out to a bunch of other places. Also emailed it out to For Culture's local arts agency, so that's all the other arts commissions for other cities, so that they could get it out to their artists. Other arts websites, and then we contacted specifically some known public artists as well as some foundries that work with public artists. And from that, we received 26 total artist applications from the Pacific Northwest, which was right in line with what we were hoping to do. And as I mentioned, this is a request for qualifications, so these were no art proposals. This was artists sending in their resumes as well as their past work samples and a statement of intent. And so then it became the question of how to select from this pool of artists, and we put together an artist selection panel, which was made up of council members, the city manager, some arts professionals, and members of the project design team for the town green. And in the first meeting, this panel came together to review the 26 applicants and narrow it down to 4 finalists. And from there, we invited those finalists back for an interview process. Also, they came for an orientation meeting, which all of the finalists showed up for, and then they came back for the interview process, which, just as an aside, was an incredible experience to sit and watch these 4 artists come and present their work and their approach. And you'll get a sample of that when Peter presents his work. But from that, the panel was able to make their determination and their recommendation to council of Peter Ryquam as the artist. And so I want to turn, well, got a little ahead of myself. But I wanted to turn some time over to Stacy Admin to represent this selection panel and explain a little bit what went into selecting Mr. Ryquam, and then also to introduce him so he can present his artwork and approach to you.
Thank you. First, I want to tell you that it was an honor and a pleasure to serve on the selection committee for this piece of art, iconic piece of art for the Kenmore Town Green. So the first evening that the selection panel met, we went through 10 representative images of each of the 26 regional artists that they had submitted in response to the call for artists. And we were considering thoughtfully the representations of their past work, but also their letters of intent and their resumes. And as we began thinking of who would be a good fit for our project in Kenmore, our panel was looking for an artist who had demonstrated in their past work the ability to create an iconic and memorable piece of art. But we were also looking for an artist who we believed would really be willing to create something specifically relevant to Kenmore and whose work would also make people smile. I believe that everyone on the panel felt pretty strongly about finding an artist who would be willing to connect with the people of our city and find out who we are and what Kenmore is all about. And at the end of our first meeting, the panel had narrowed down our choices, as Brendan said, to 4 artists who we would interview in our second meeting. So after meeting those 4 fantastic finalists and learning more about them and their work, we concluded at the end of our second meeting that with the decision to ask Peter Ryquam to create the artwork to be placed in the town green. Peter impressed us with what I would characterize as a thoughtful playfulness in his prior work. We believed that he could create for us a thoughtful piece of art that would connect with the broad audience and make passersby smile. And we especially appreciated the desire that Peter expressed to us to connect up with the community wherever he's worked on a project before. So with that, I would like to introduce you to Peter by first reading his artist biography. Peter has been creating interactive, site-specific public artworks for 30 years in a variety of civic venues throughout the Puget Sound region and as far away as Juneau, Alaska, Los Angeles, California, and Albuquerque, New Mexico. Peter strives to create durable, well-crafted, and meaningful works that speak to the uniqueness of each site and to do so with a balance of humor, elegance, and sophistication. He works in a variety of materials, including metals, concrete, granite, glass, and light. Several of Peter's recent projects have been recognized by the Americans for the Arts Public Art Network as outstanding public art projects. These include a project for a Seattle fire station titled 9 Lives, inspired by the iconic Eveready battery logo, and a 2014 project, The Empty Chair, which serves as a memorial to the Japanese and Japanese Americans from the Juneau area who were incarcerated during World War II. Ryquam Studio, New Art Projects Company, specializes in the design, fabrication, and installation of his own work, as well as that of architects, designers, and other artists. And he is experienced in working with a variety of stakeholders on many complex projects. He's taught extensively and served for 6 years as a commissioner on the King County Public Arts Commission, which is now known as For Culture. Here's Peter.
Thank you for having me this evening. Thank you, Brennan and Stacy, for your introduction. I'm just going to show you a few images of some of my past work just to give you an idea of the kinds of things I do and talk a little bit about my approach to developing a concept for this project. So how do I'm not seeing the... I'll just reach over there. That's fine. That's fine. So this is my most recent piece. This is called Hit or Miss, and it's a 15-foot tall claw hammer on a site down in Puyallup at the Pierce County Skills Center, and it's meant to represent a variety, stands in as a metaphor really for a lot of the different tools that are used in different programs that they teach at this particular school. And it's a wide-ranging program that they offer there, and each of them has very specialized tools. So this hammer represents the most basic of all tools. And it's meant to be interactive. It serves, in a lot of ways, the kinds of approach that I want to develop for this site here in Kenmore. It's an iconic piece, and it's interactive, and it has a little bit of a sense of humor to it. This is the piece that Stacy referred to at the fire station in Fremont. It's called 9 Lives, and it's based on the Ever-Ready battery logo, which is pervasive throughout this fire station. The firefighters adopted that logo as their mascot some years ago because it's station number 9. And so what I did was I used that as a reference point in developing the artwork to create something that is meaningful to that community of firefighters and also the residential community that surrounds the station, and has a reference to something that they're already familiar with. So here's a detail of that. And the glass eyes have LED lights behind them so they light up at night. So as you're walking down the street, the cat has faces on both sides. So anytime you look up at it, the cat is watching you pass the station, and the eyes light up. This is another fire station project in Albuquerque, New Mexico, called Fire Rocket, and the concept came really from a number of different sources. For one, the state of New Mexico has a long history of rocketry, and so I wanted to make some reference to that. And this is one of the things I try to do when I develop a new concept, is to connect in some way with the history and the culture of the site. And this is something I'm looking forward to doing here, really learning more about the history of Kenmore, its culture, the environment, the landscape, the architecture. All those things factor into the development of my ideas. And the other element of this was to create a piece that could be seen as a representation of a very advanced firefighting force. So it has LED lights that flash, and it's very animated. This is a project down in Kent, and this is the last couple of slides I'll show you. This is called Big Corn, and it's meant to be an icon representative of the history of the Kent Valley as a rich agricultural area, which is hardly even visible anymore. There's virtually very little farmland left. It's all been developed. And so this is an homage to the history of the valley. These are 17.5-foot tall stalks of corn, and the individual ears of corn are about 2 feet long. So that's all I'm going to show you image-wise, and I just wanted to say a couple words about my approach to developing a concept for this Kenmore Town Green project. What I like to do is really spend some time in the area, walking around and visiting the local businesses and eating in the restaurants and talking to people and going to the shoreline and looking at the environment and talking to the fishermen and trying to get a sense of people's ideas about what makes their city special. And then my job as an artist is to take all of that information that I gather and somehow distill it down into an image that is really representative, that makes sense and has some relevance to that site. And again, I try to do that with, you know, a little bit of humor, and that was in the original call to artists, and so I think that's, you know, that's a mandate that I need to pay attention to. So I'm really excited about this project, and I'm excited to have you approve the panel selection and let me move forward with the design development. And in a year or so, I'll show you something you haven't seen before. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Stacy. So we'll have some time for questions for Peter if you want to ask him anything, but just wanted to show you a little bit about what, moving forward, what to expect. You know, when and if the council approves Mr. Ryquam as the artist for the Town Green project, we will issue an art design contract. Just here, we have it ready for your approval. And once we enter that contract, Mr. Ryquam would enter into a research and idea generation stage, and then 2 phases of design development. There would be an initial design development and approval, and then a final design proposal and approval. And after that, that's when we'd enter into a contract for the actual implementation and the construction and installation of the art, which we give a year. It might end up being less, but we give a year for that process of creation and installation. So what we are here now to do, what we need from you as the City Council, is for confirmation of Mr. Ryquam as the artist for this project, as well as an approval of the design contract, which is, I didn't mention earlier, but that's $24,000 of the $120,000 budget. And then as far as the full budget will be appropriated at a later date with budget amendments. So
I'm a little confused in that what I have here in the notes is that we are appropriating the 120 at this time.
Yes, that was.
You're saying that's not true.
That was a little bit of a miscommunication, and we spoke with the city manager, and that will be something that would be done later.
So then we're appropriating $24,000 for the contract for artistic design and proposal development.
Yes.
Fine. Okay. Questions? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you. I have a question on the approval for design approval. Does that go back to the art committee then for approval, or is that an administrative function, or how does that?
So there's a few different phases. The initial phase of that first proposal will go through. It will be a little bit more on the staff level, and working with also Hewitt architects and getting some ideas from them and the project manager. But there will also be a stakeholder committee that will pull together of council members, the city manager, people who care about this, and that will be part of that first design approval. The second design approval will go to a panel that will pull together of design professionals, engineers, people who know something about this, and they'll review it from the aspect of what does it look like as an overall design, not so much thinking about the specific community, but more as looking at the technical aspect of it.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate that, and thank you for all the work the committee did, and I love the fact that one of your criteria was to make people smile. We could never have too many smiles, and I absolutely love the work that you've shown that Peter had today, and that's a fine-looking beard, I got to say. So thank you. I look forward to seeing what you can pull together.
Thank you.
Councilmember Danuski.
So I had the pleasure of sitting on the art committee, and oh my goodness, there's so much talent out there. As a non-artist, I was amazed. But you want to know where the fun is? The fun is sitting right there. And how I know we hit the nail on the head is when well, I didn't even mean to do that. When you pulled up hit or miss, every single person in this room smiled. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
Mine is just a comment. When God passed out the art, the music, and the sports genes, He did not give me any of them. But everybody needs an audience, so that's my part. I will enjoy.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Deputy Mayor.
Is the 24,000 part of the 120,000?
Yes. Yes, it is.
I was making sure we had all the else. I was going to come to you last.
Oh, that's fine. You can
No,
wait.
fine. Councilmember Sperry.
You sure?
I'm positive. I'm positive.
You know, well, I also had the pleasure of being on the art selection committee, and Brendan did a great job with really managing and the process and all that. But I'm so grateful that Peter is here, and it was a very strong yes, that we really felt like he was a good fit. And one of the things that you didn't mention, but also impressed me, is that you actually fabricate your own work. And so I felt like that was an added bonus to it. So we look forward to you hanging around Kenmore and seeing what happens.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it too.
Any other questions, comments? All right, hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to confirm the selection of Peter Requiem as the artist for the Town Green sculpture and appropriate $24,000 for the contract for the artist design and proposal development.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Comments? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Januski?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Sperry?
Yes.
Councilmember Herbig?
Yes.
Wonderful. The motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Neighborhood Transportation Plan Program Update. Mrs. Overlease. And Mr. Schock, traffic engineer.
It was kind of cool.
All right, council members, Mr. Mayor, my name is Brett Schock. I'm the traffic engineer, and I'm here to provide an update on the Neighborhood Transportation Plan Program. So a little review of where we're going here. I'll be looking at the program itself, and then speaking about each of the neighborhood meetings that I've been having, our plan for communication about the meetings to the citizens of Kenmore, the participation that we've been getting, a little bit about the comments we've been hearing, and then some of the projects that are in development in response to those comments, and speaking to the implementation schedule, which is coming up soon. Just so a review of the program, the Neighborhood Transportation Program is a proactive outreach to our citizens to gather feedback on our residential streets. We're looking for citizen concerns regarding vehicles, but also pedestrian and bicycle mobility and accessibility and connections. Through a series of 3 meetings for each neighborhood, I've been gathering feedback, assessing priorities, and brainstorming solutions. Each meeting is a very collaborative effort. I give a short presentation similar to what's being given tonight, and then everyone gathers around maps on tables and draw right on them with Sharpies, and problem at this intersection, and we want speeds addressed on this road. It's a really neat approach. Gets everyone talking and kind of bounce ideas off each other. So the city was divided based on a combination of our arterials and topography into a total of 15 different neighborhoods. The total budget for improvements in the program was divided on a per capita basis among these neighborhoods based on the total number of households. Each neighborhood is offered a series of 3 meetings. The first 2 are to identify citizen concerns, gather feedback, and look at priorities. And then the third meeting is kind of an invite only to previous participants to present projects that have been developed based on their feedback, and one last chance to massage things a little bit before we start to put projects on the ground. For purposes of scheduling the meetings, the neighborhoods were split into 3 groups, A, B, and C. So the first group, Group A, is actually going through their 3rd meetings this week. So I'm reviewing the projects that I've developed with those previous participants. And after that, we'll be ready for implementation on that first group of neighborhoods. The second group is currently having their second meeting for feedback. And their 3rd meetings will be in March. So by later part of spring, we'll be ready for implementation. And the 3rd group is going to be starting through the process in March of this year. Each of the meetings for each neighborhood is posted on the program website, and we've added them to the city calendar. We do a Facebook posting each week to notify of meetings that are coming up that week. But in addition to the online communications, before each first meeting, all the households in the neighborhood receive a postcard similar to the one you see on the screen. The second meetings have been advertised through yard signs that I place kind of in the meetings off the arterials a little bit, so only the people in that neighborhood really see the notification of the date and time. For the 3rd group, I think we're actually going to be adding that second meeting to these postcards just to try and increase awareness of the meetings. And then, as I mentioned before, the 3rd meeting is kind of an invite only to the previous participants to look at the projects that have been developed based on their feedback. And we have had translators on hand, and we've done some multi-language outreach when we've identified that as a need in a specific neighborhood. The participation in the program has been varied. There have been some lonely evenings where there's been no one but me and whoever's been helping me out for that night. But we've had as many as 21 people at a meeting, so that was a little bit of a crowded night. We had all 3 maps going, and the pens were working overtime. We've been gathering feedback in person and online. Each neighborhood has had 2 or 3 comments that I've received through our website, so people do write in. Despite this, the overall turnout has been lower than planned at each meeting, but I think that a lot of this is due to the spread of neighborhoods. We have 15 neighborhoods. That's pretty well divided up. And looked at as a whole, the participation rate is similar to some other recent city outreach programs, like Imagine Kenmore. So initially, I've been looking at a certain number of people to proceed through the program, kind of a participation threshold, but based on the realities of the turnout, have kind of dialed that back. Just looking for good feedback that's kind of spread geographically through the neighborhoods, has an impact on most of the neighborhood, isn't just isolated in one cul-de-sac. And if good projects are identified, we're going to go ahead and put them on the ground. Some of the larger projects in neighborhoods that have a little less feedback, I'm going to kind of shelve those and see if we can't reach out to those neighborhoods again, get a little bit more feedback, get some ideas of priorities before we take on some of those larger projects. So just to give you a general sense of what we're hearing at each of the meetings, there's concern with vehicle speeds on some of the residential streets. But the vehicle speed concerns are especially in areas where there's a lot of kids walking to school, in areas where we don't have sidewalks, or where there's poor lighting. They tend to focus in those areas. The pedestrian facilities themselves are a concern. People would like to see a lot more sidewalks. But there's also locations where we have gaps, even in just the on-street walkways that have been identified. And some connections to the back end of parks that have been identified as, it'd be nice to just go through here rather than take the long way around. We've also had a lot of concerns about intersections and sharp curves, the visibility. You have some overgrowth in places. You have some fences that have been built right on the right-of-way lines, makes it difficult to see around corners. So we're seeing what we can do with that. We have locations where signage hasn't necessarily kept up with development. So I've been doing some stop sign warrant analyses to see if we can balance things a little bit better. And then insufficient lighting has been identified in a few places, makes it difficult to walk, especially again on the school routes. That's something that a lot of people have identified. So at the meetings, we work together to brainstorm solutions with the citizens who are participating. Get a lot of good ideas, working together with staff and the citizens. It's kind of impressive how far signing and striping can go to do what people would like to see done. But after that second meeting, city staff takes a look at all the comments and been identifying projects that can meet the highest priorities that were identified through the two meetings. Some of the more common projects have been curve warning signs with advisory speeds, intersection warning signs with advisory speeds, striping for walkways, moving center lines over so that we can take advantage of the pavement we do have to provide a little bit more space for pedestrians, visually narrowing the roadways through using of fog lines, defining center lines through curves that have some visibility issues, again with the fences and the overhanging growth. A few on-road symbols can go a long way. The slow sign that you see up there, painted around a curve, research shows that actually has a really good effect on vehicle speeds. And then the speed limit on the roadway as well, which we have in a few places in Kenmore. A few people have expressed an interest in having that placed. And then some symbols to increase visibility of pedestrian walkways. Street light upgrades. I've been working with PSE and have identified a lot of locations where we can either upgrade existing fixtures to the brighter and more directionally focused LED street light heads, or put some additional street lights on the existing poles. It brightens up the walkway, but the LED fixtures are not increasing the brightness to the lots behind. They're very focused on the roadway. But there are baffles that can be installed on the back end if there is an issue. There have been a number of larger project ideas that have come up. Some are things that have been known in the city for a while. The curve of Arrowhead Drive that has not a lot of room for pedestrians. Some of these projects, we're going to be able to use some of our arterial improvement funding to help out the neighborhood budgets, because some of these can get fairly expensive and they exceed the per capita budget for each neighborhood. We've had some requests for RFB crosswalks at the arterials, especially around the Tolt Trail and 73rd. Like I said, the Arrowhead Drive curve, increasing the available pedestrian space there and creating a tighter curve for vehicles to help calm the speeds. Looking at the intersection of 182nd and 73rd, you can see a picture there of a curb extension that would dramatically shorten the pedestrian crossing distance. It would align the cars a little bit better coming out of 182nd so they can see onto 73rd, and provides a little bit of a gateway onto 182nd, give the impression you're on a neighborhood, not necessarily on an arterial street. And then the intersection of 84th Avenue and Simons was identified as a big issue, and that's something that we'll be able to reshape that intersection using some curbing and some striping to work a little bit better for visibility for pedestrians and vehicles. So the final product for each neighborhood after that third meeting and projects are presented to the previous participants is a map kind of like you see here. Each of the comments is identified. The bigger the symbol on the map is the higher priority. And then the projects are called out in the little bubbles there. So I'll be posting this map and a packet of describing each of the projects online, and we'll be using that to help guide the implementation of the projects. PSE and King County will take care of the lighting and the striping and signing. Some of the larger projects we may have to use contractors and bid out the projects. The 182nd crosswalk or the work on the Arrowhead curve might require that. So as I said before, the first group of neighborhoods is pretty much ready for implementation. Their projects will probably get on the ground here starting next month. But the total number of projects among those four neighborhoods is over 30, so it's a lot to be coordinated. And projects will probably continue throughout the year between the ones that are larger that take a little longer and just, as different neighborhoods finish up the program. That third group of neighborhoods probably won't get through their last meeting until June, so they won't have projects getting on the ground until the middle of summer. So overall, the neighborhood transportation program has been very well received. I've gotten a lot of nice comments at the end of meetings from citizens thanking us for the outreach effort and the proactive approach. The citizens have been very good partners in developing solutions and identifying their concerns. And I look forward to getting some projects on the ground. If you have any questions.
Questions? Councilmember Sperry.
It's not a question, it's a comment.
Please.
Can you be sure and take before and after pictures of your projects? Because
Yes.
I think that's going to be really important to document all the improvements you're making and also provide great examples for future neighborhoods.
Okay.
So, and you're a hero. I had a family member that asked for a sign on a road that turned in dead end, and the sign came within a very short time. He was so excited, and somebody else came. He's like, "They just did that. Look, that's my sign. That's my sign." So people love it when they can have changes like that are so directly impacting them. So thank you.
Glad to help.
Mrs. Overlease.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your responsiveness and to questions, and I really appreciate the openness and transparency that you've brought to the engineering department. I mean, you've been there to answer the questions that I get from different people, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Despite the potential there for your short-sightedness sometimes.
You haven't said that to me for a while.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the way that you've just jumped in and tried to answer questions as fast as you can, and thank you.
You're welcome.
It is appreciated.
And I'd like to thank Brett as well. 15 neighborhoods that are all in different stages of this program. He very often has 2 meetings in one evening. He's trying to find his work-life balance, and we were talking today about how to do all these things yet be efficient and work with the neighbors to manage expectations, and I think he's just done an awesome job. It's really fun to watch him at these meetings.
He's got 2 meetings on Thursday night, and my neighborhood is one of them. So,
yep.
I think I'm going to finally get to make one of those. Councilmember Curtis.
So, Brett, have you ever worked in a city that's so much fun?
No, never.
All right.
Well, ask him if he's ever worked for a city.
Yeah, well. I didn't mention that part.
Anything else? Deputy Mayor.
Yes. The concept of this whole thing is great, but when are we going to see what the solutions are? Will you be presenting those to us, or do we just see them up here?
I can certainly make another update later, but they will be appearing on the website, especially that first group of neighborhoods. Those will be up on the website in the next couple of weeks.
How about 100? I haven't heard about any in my neighborhood. Maybe
they haven't sent out a postcard?
I haven't gotten one.
Must be in group 3.
I haven't got one.
I didn't receive a postcard. How about 182nd, where we had the discussion about the 1 lane?
There's going to be some additional lighting. There's actually 4 poles between City Hall and the apartment complexes that are going to get a new light. And then that's on the south side of the street. And then on the north side of the street, there are 3 poles that will be upgraded to LED lighting.
Okay.
Well, and since you brought it up, Brett did come to me and Chris a week or 2 ago and said, "Hey, Rob, because of the input from that neighborhood, we're actually getting citizens asking for a walkway on that street." No surprise. And Brett asked me if we could revisit the one-way idea. I said, well, I think we got a pretty good direction on that from City Council. But he made the point that people are asking for a walkway, and that's the main thing that the one-way option does create, is a walkway on 182nd. So based on the direction you gave us a few weeks or months ago, whenever that was, I told Brett that he needs to continue to look at ways to slow the speeds on 182nd and including a speed limit reduction and also traffic calming devices. That wouldn't create the walkway that the citizens were asking for, but it would create a little bit more comfortable experience for people who are walking because the speeds would be slower. But Brett reminded me also that it's not really a speed issue there, it's really a lack of walkway issue. So we're still working on it internally. But without the ability to construct a new sidewalk or create a one-way that creates the walkway, my vote is for chicaning it and lowering the speeds. So Brett basically just mentioned what he's doing with lighting, but he also is looking at some traffic calming options there. And I know what I'm doing is opening up a conversation that could go on for 15, 20 minutes, but I thought it was worth mentioning since since Deputy Mayor Van Ness asked about it.
Thank you. The thought that's occurred to me is that if we use the right-of-way on the north side of the road and shift the 2 lanes to the north, then you could have plenty of walkway on the south. The downside is you lose all that parking along the street. Okay, what are the priorities for the community? A walkway or parking? And you could do one, but you have to sacrifice the other.
There's also the pavement is the road pavement ends a few inches north of the
right-of-way,
the stripe. Yeah,
you could extend the pavement.
But again, that's getting down. I mean, that's the engineer's job. We're not doing that. So,
okay,
thank you.
But I don't think it's an either or. I don't think there are other. But okay,
right, but that's their job.
I would add that parking on the north side of the road adjacent to that wall is very different than pushing traffic north with heavy trucks and vehicles. So just shifting traffic north, I don't know is necessarily a slam dunk.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
No, not to me, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Yep.
We'll talk about it later.
Councilmember Herbig.
I may be misremembering our discussion, but I actually remember our discussion a little differently than our city manager did. I don't think we actually said don't do one way. I think what we said was let it go through the neighborhood transportation planning process and see what the citizens want. We may need to review the tape, but I think that's the direction that we gave, we're not doing this under any circumstances. And if we're going through the neighborhood planning process and the neighbors are saying that that's something they want to do, I think it might be worth exploring. But I think maybe we need to review what we actually decided at that meeting.
Yeah, I think the neighbor's opinion is critical in this. So.
That night we did hear from one neighbor, a business.
Right.
And again, I don't want to make you think that the neighbors are asking for a one-way street. What they're asking for is a walkway. Right. And ideally, if we had more funds and if this was a higher priority, we would build a new sidewalk there. It would also probably mean encroaching where some of the mobile homes are too. So anyway, yeah, I would, if Councilmember Herbig heard it differently than I did, I would like some clarification there, because I thought I did get a pretty clear no on that.
I think
Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Sperry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think the main thing about the proposal that we did see at that time was it was two-way to a certain point and then one-way. And I just saw confusion. I just saw people getting really confused. So I don't know if there's a simpler way, that would be less confusing for drivers that might be there. I guess one other thought is the right-of-way. What does the city actually own? Again, it may encroach upon basically people's yards, so that might be a trade-off. So that would be interesting to me to know, what technically is right away and what is there to work with versus what we see now. So just some thoughts.
I have. Are you done, Laurie? Thank you. And then
to add one other dimension to this, I know at the retreat we talked about looking into the potential of some parking discussions with Murphy Auction House, and it's quite possible, I shouldn't say it's quite possible, we don't know what's possible, but it would be nice to know maybe if we got a little further along what is potentially feasible in some kind of an agreement with the property owner, that could actually have some impact on what needs to be done for that site and for road frontage improvements too.
So would you like us to kind of review the tape and make sure we heard what we thought we heard, or would you like to provide some clarification tonight?
My recollection was that we recommended that we explore other alternatives, either traffic calming devices or whatever, but to look at it again, and that we were uncomfortable with the one-way street. Not that we said no way, but let's explore other alternatives, traffic calming devices or whatever.
That's kind of what I remember also is, let's look at other things first. I don't think we said hard, fast, concrete, no. But I thought we want to look at other things before we went that direction. But again, it may be better, maybe more helpful to review the tape than our memories. Councilmember Danuski.
Yeah, I'm also recalling that we were not in favor of the one-way plan as it was that day. But that's my recollection as well.
I heard what you're all saying. I heard at the meeting that there were concerns about how it would operate. There were concerns about its functionality, but we also said, well, but we also know we had these meetings coming up, so let's wait. It's, not understanding it now, let's wait and hear what the community says. But I would also say at most of our community meetings, the attendance was not overwhelming. So the people that came to the meeting were very interested in additional pedestrian facilities, but I wouldn't consider that an overwhelming representation of, folks that live along that street. So
that's a really good point. I even asked Brett, of the people that came, how many were asking for a walkway, and I think you said the number was 7 people. But that may not sound like a lot, but in proportion to the number of people that came, it was a pretty good percentage.
We know the demand is there. There's a lot of people that live there. There's no facility. So I might propose that, we keep thinking about it and we look at, to see if we've thought of any more options of creating a facility out there.
I know you guys have done everything you can to get the word out. I'm confident of that. However, there was the people that were here from Chile. The one woman lives here in Kenmore. She's a resident of Kenmore and has been for some time. She's a social worker who's on maternity leave, and she has talked with Leslie about volunteering her service. And I think it's particularly to reach out to the neighbors and perhaps a language barrier or whatever, but try to help. And I don't know if you'd find any benefit in that or not, but
well, we've done that and it's definitely helpful.
Okay. Because maybe it's not the traditional way that we have to reach some of the people that are most concerned with this, but I know you guys are doing everything in your power to do it, but I think, fine. Anybody else? Have we muddied the water sufficiently for you?
We're good.
Okay.
Thanks, Brett.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to Thursday.
All right.
See what's planned for, what's it, the South Silver or Gray?
Gray South.
Gray South
Yep.
2. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much. Staff reports.
I have several things. I need your direction on 2 or 3 things. This coming Thursday afternoon, the Sound Transit Board is going to be meeting, and they're going to be discussing the ST3 projects. Kenmore and our neighboring cities will show up in force, and in yellow T-shirts, and mayors will be there, and so we'll definitely have that on our calendars. Also, regarding the St. Edward ball fields, I think I would like to talk to you a little bit and get your additional clarification and direction on this. You may recall that on the 11th, 2 weeks ago, I talked to you about potential deal points for leasing the St. Edward ball fields, such as a 30-year term and things like that from the state parks. Talked to you about synthetic turf, and especially if we can improve environmental benefits. And so that's the direction we're going. Talked about lighting, and this is where I need your additional thoughts. So at the meeting on the 11th, we talked about not doing ball field lighting now, but not shutting the door on it for later either. And I think that's kind of where we left it. Well, since then, last week, some ball field advocates and I, and the mayor, and Nancy Ousley, and Councilmember Smith, went down to Olympia to meet with Michael Hankinson at State Parks to talk about this project. And the ball field advocates really made the case for doing lighting now. State Parks is hesitant. They have been hesitant, but they've also been, I would say, warming up to the idea too. And the State Parks staff person, Michael Hankinson, that we met with yesterday, seemed more open to it than he had in the past. I wouldn't say that he's in favor of it, but he seemed more open to it. And he also told us it would, getting staff recommendation, park staff recommendation, is going to be important, especially since a unanimous State Parks Commission vote will be needed. And he also talked to us about the need to be able to convince the director, Mr. Hawk. So because of the technology that's advanced in the last decade on ball field lighting, you can aim it more, there's less leakage. We can talk about reasonable hours and coordinating that with the seminary building. I thought I'd just come back to you and get your thoughts and direction one more time on ball field lighting. And so my main question for you is, do we move forward as I described on the 11th, where we don't do ball field lighting now, but we don't close the door on it for later? Or do we try to go for ball field lighting now in the lease? That's my question.
Councilmember Curtis.
Is there any opportunity that you will have between here and whenever the deadline is to talk with some of the board members to kind of get their sense of whether they're, because I wouldn't want this to be a deal breaker. So I'd rather not bring it up if it's going to be, to the point where we could lose one vote. But if you kind of have an opportunity to talk to some people and it feels like they're kind of leaning that direction, then I guess I'd at least consider going for it if staff will support that.
A couple of clarifications. Clarification, and I'll wait for a while. Land use decisions. Is this a land use decision? Because land use decisions is 100. You have to have 100% of the commission's vote. So is this a land use decision?
Because it's a lease that's more than 20 years, I'm being told that it's a unanimous decision is needed.
A unanimous decision is needed. All right.
From the commission.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, one of the things I know we discussed down in Olympia was getting the input from Kevin Daniels' team, and because they potentially could have some reservations about having lighting, but may also understand that it's reasonable and with reasonable time constraints. If it's dark at 4 o'clock in November, it definitely is nice if you can get even a few hours in there, even to 7, 8 o'clock. So I don't know what's that discussion has not happened, but I think that would be reasonable input to understand where they are on it. and I know it came up in the meeting.
I certainly think with technology the way it is and LED lighting nowadays, you can really direct it
I believe-
exactly where you want it.
Right.
And I just cannot see that it would go backwards in.
But I bring it up maybe less for us as a body to be concerned, but from a state parks perspective.
Yeah.
I think that clearly they're more focused, I think, right now on the seminary project and anything that would be a hindrance to that. And so it would be at least useful information, I think, for them to understand if we were going to advocate or at least not exclude the option in the future. It would be nice to have that information available for state parks.
As somebody who's been part of those discussions and part of other discussions with parks over the years, I don't want to close the door on anything, but I want to see the lease signed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's
You don't want to
number
close
one
the door, but-
on anything. I want to see the lease
But you
signed.
had a but. What was but?
I want to see the lease signed.
Okay, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, I want to see the lease signed. I think whatever we need to do to get that lease signed is what we should be doing.
I agree. However, I also think that we want to, like we had talked about 2 weeks ago, I think we want to at least have as many options available, assuming we can make a reasonable case why it's logical to do that, rather than to have state parks say no up front. If they're going to say no up front, then there's really no incentive to ever change that opinion for them going down the line. And so that's why I would say it would be more beneficial for us, since we're making the investment, to at least have options available going forward.
Yeah, we need options. I agree with you. We absolutely have to have the options going forward. We can't have the doors closed. Councilmember Danuski.
So to make usable ball fields in the winter, if you want to use them Monday through Friday, you pretty much need to have lighting. So definitely want to keep the option open. I'm not sure how it's worded for the option, but I guess if I was a state parks person who was against lighting, I would be against lighting, and I would be against the contract written with an option, because it's leaving your foot in the door. So I don't know how it's written.
I don't know necessarily it has to have an option in the contract. It just can't prohibit it.
Yeah, the idea, my thought based on the direction last council meeting was that we wouldn't prohibit it now, and if we wanted it later, we would need state parks approval.
Okay, so it would be written that we would need their approval. It wouldn't
Later.
just be we're not even talking about it thing.
But based on our conversation with the ball field advocates and park staff last week, I got to thinking, well, maybe we should try for it now and try to get approval for it now. But then I thought to myself, well, that's different than what I told council on the 11th. So my inclination these last few days has been to try to go for it now and see where it takes us. I just think, given the level of investment in the park that we'll be making, to get the extra use out of it will make the investment even more worth it. But at the same time, I don't want this one particular issue to be the lightning rod that kills it.
And maybe as it goes forward, we'll hear more. If that does end up being the thing that kills it, we can back off on that.
Could back off, yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking.
And then in the totally out of left field question, is there
so to speak.
Oh my gosh, did I do that twice tonight? I don't usually do that at all. I can't picture it in my mind, but I'm wondering if there's a way to plant trees in between the ball field and maybe the St. Edward's Seminary. And
yes, that came up.
Plant a row of trees that will get very high, maybe that might help.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and plus the hotel is going to have parking lot lighting.
Yeah.
So.
I would just add that if we can avoid having to go back to them for their approval in the future, I think that's a key part. We know how hard it's been to get where we are today, and if we have to all of a sudden ask them for approval on something that we have a clear need for. If there's no compelling reason for them to grant it, then why would they? Because they've up until the last 4 months, it's been very difficult in the last 10 years to get anything. And even when we can look at the gym, and when they leased the gym out, when Camp clearly said, have it available for open community time, and so my concern is that the more constraints we have in the lease, the harder going forward it would be. And the other thing, and this is just, I know we want, and I want the longest lease possible, because that means we have control over our investment. But on the same hand, if a 30-year lease is not attainable, and because we need unanimous support, then I think it's worth considering a 20-year lease, even with the investment, the scope of the investment we're making, knowing that we would probably have a very compelling case to extend that lease in 20 years. But I look at it as one way to avoid having to deal with the unanimous commission, which I think on almost any parks issue is a difficult thing to get. It's difficult in many bodies. So I think we do need either a backup plan or maybe even to think about that lease term.
Yeah, if we went 20 years, would that require just majority?
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be. You're right. There's a whole bunch of questions down here. Councilmember Herbig.
So do we know what the costs will be to us if we add lights to the plan that we were talking about a couple weeks ago?
Yeah, the landscape architect has those costs broken out, and that was, I believe it was part of your packet on the 11th.
So we're talking tens of thousands, 100,000. I don't have the packet in front of me.
I should have that, but I don't. But I can get back to you on that.
I just worry that we may be setting up expectations for parks and then committing ourselves to another $100,000, $200,000 to do the lighting. And I as somebody who until recently played a lot of field sports, I'm usually very pro lighting of fields. I just need to say I have some reservations about lighting in a state park. And like I said, usually I'm pro all of this, but I have something isn't sitting right with me, and I'm not 100% there. I'm not saying I can't get there on it, but right now in a place that has wildlife and has a lot of other kind of passive uses going on, the addition of the fields doesn't bother me. It's somehow the lighting seems out of character in a way that other uses there don't. So I'm not 100% sold on the idea of lights yet. I'm not opposed. It's just not sitting right with me. So just had to say that.
Councilmember Curtis.
My comment was back to the 20-year lease. If that's what it takes to get agreement and all we need is a majority, it's unlikely in 20 years they'd say we're going to take our ball field back. So I think we wouldn't lose our investment if we put it in for 20 years and then ask for extensions at that point.
Councilmember Sperry.
Well, I do think that the 20-year lease might be a more strategic move. The lighting, I think, is a tough one because everybody has a picture of what that looks like. And, for example, I was down at Nathan Hale High School last week in the evening, and as I'm driving up there, I see these giant lights, and it was just like, what's all going on? And I look, and these fields were absolutely packed with kids playing soccer. So on the good side, all the kids were getting to use the fields, but on the not so good side, it was really dramatic, and that particular type of lighting, to me, would feel very out of place in a state park. So I think the real key is, how are you going to demonstrate, explain, give people a different picture of how this might be compatible with the state park and the potential for the redevelopment of the building? Because, that kind of very tall, high stadium football field lighting seems it doesn't seem to fit. So I guess, I don't have an answer. I'm just saying that's the challenge, because, when I saw that and then I have that picture in my mind while we're talking about the potential for lighting the baseball fields, or that could be a challenge.
There's 3, and I can remember 2 of them offhand. One of them is Blanchette High School recently went through a big community. It was a big community issue when they decided to light their fields, and they've got the new technology lighting, and so that's one worth taking a look at. And the other one is Tambar Park up in, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's, I believe it's just north of 180th and 35th Avenue Southeast, kind of on the Bothell Mill Creek border. And it has a wooded area. There's a lot of wetlands around there, but they've also got the new lighting. So there's one other that I can't remember what it was, but
what's the spelling on the second one?
I think it's Tambarck.
And Paul Schmidt, one of the ball field advocates, he's going to get examples and pictures to show. Is that what you remember him doing? Yeah. So.
Councilmember Smith, you had something?
No, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
When we first started talking about lighting, I thought to myself, well, the park is closed after dusk. And this would mean having to open it. But with the Daniels project also going, I mean, he's going to have lighting, as you mentioned, on his parking lot. Now, the difference is intensity for sure. But the park has to be open after dusk for his operation, or at least access to the seminary building and that parking lot. And the ball fields are in between the entrance and that. So there's a difference in intensity, but still, there'll be lighting in the park if that project goes through. And why not light the fields too? Especially with the new technology where you can direct it to the field and have very little outside lighting. I look from my house up on top of the hill across to Bothell High School, and when those lights are on over there, I mean, the whole hillside is lit up and the sky is lit up above. So, but we're talking more directional lighting, I'm sure. So, the difference in technology, plus the fact that it's already going to be lit up to some degree, I'd say go for it.
So I'm going to continue to test the waters during the negotiations and meet with the director, and if he's a hard no and there's no convincing him, then I think that will tell me a lot. We have 2 more items. Mayor Baker, he's great at reaching out to other mayors and people in other jurisdictions, and he's connected with the mayor of Monroe. And the city of Monroe is kind of like the city of Kenmore. They've started a SR 522 coalition with its own logo and everything. And the mayor is the one who brought this to my attention. And Mayor Thomas of Monroe is asking that we put our city logo on their letterhead, asking for funding for a section of 522 near their town. It's that section that goes down to 1 lane as you're approaching Monroe. And I was just there the other day, and I noticed that looks like there was a project that got started to put more capacity out there, and you can still see the graded area where...
That was a railroad.
Oh, was it? It was a railroad? Oh, okay. But looked like a unfinished highway to me, but it was all grassed over. But anyway, so they're asking for us to put our logo on their letter asking for funding to widen 522 in Monroe. I'm leaning towards no, just because might kind of dilute our efforts. I'm not saying don't support their idea. I'm just saying I think putting our logo on it's going a little too far. That's just my gut. Your reaction?
So I talked with Breonna Taylor about this, and Breonna thinks that as long as we're just supporting this at the legislature level, that she doesn't see any harm in it, that it's basically they're looking for highway money, and they would like other people, and my thought is we've always been one, that has been a regional thinker, that it certainly wouldn't hurt us at this time to do that. Councilmember Herbig.
One, I am worried that it would dilute our brand around 522. And two, if this was somebody downstream between us and Seattle, I would be completely supportive of us jumping in and helping out. But most of the traffic is coming from this way, going through us and heading into Seattle. So making it easier for folks to come from further away and drive through Kenmore and go to Seattle is not something I want to encourage. So I'm not in favor of signing on and adding our logo to this.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I also would not be in favor of it. I think there are limited funds in the Puget Sound area, and I don't think that's a very good use of the funds. I drive out to Monroe once or twice a month anyway to visit my clinic out there, and it's a variety of times a day, and it really works okay. It's crowded as it goes down to that one lane, but it generally moves well, and there's room if there's an accident to kind of get off to the side, and I just don't think it's that much of a bottleneck. It'd be, I think, a nice to have piece of highway, but I wouldn't see it as an essential piece of highway.
Anybody else?
I would just say my experience driving it is different than Councilmember Curtis's, and it is a horrendous commute, and I'm thankful many times I don't have to drive it during rush hour. But I would not be for putting our logo on it. I think it's just another SR 522 project with our logo, and we've made such good strides in bringing recognition to our project that I wouldn't want to dilute it at all.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Smith that during rush hour, that is a bottleneck out there, and going either way. When I had my office out in Monroe, my wife wanted to buy a home out there and live out there. And I said, well, not until I'm practicing out here all the time and don't have to be driving with that rush hour traffic. As it was, I was driving the opposite direction of the rush hour traffic, and it wasn't a problem. But since then, they've completed the divided highway from the bridge all the way out into Monroe, and there's that section from the bridge over the river back to the Echo Falls overpass. And when they built that overpass at Echo Falls, it's a 2-lane overpass. I don't know why they did it when they were at the same time building a divided highway farther in towards Woodinville. I think they're looking for support and help in getting DOT to finish that project. All that was originally planned to be a divided highway all the way out. I don't know if we can lend our support to them without, I don't think we need to have our logo on their letter. And they're appealing to the state DOT. They're not appealing to Sound Transit on this.
Correct.
This is a transportation department thing. But if our support will help them get that road finished, then I think it doesn't cost us anything, and I don't think it's any liability to us to do it. Our portion of 522 is already funded. Not completed, but it's already funded. So I'd be in favor of helping them in any way we can.
All right.
So I'm not quite sure what I heard.
You got pretty clear direction. There's 2 wanting to support them, and the rest don't. So
Okay.
Oh, okay.
that's pretty clear.
All right. Yeah. The mayor of Monroe's been very cooperative and
Right. He's been very cooperative in helping us with Sound Transit. So
yeah,
we can tell him no.
or, nicely, and we can verbally offer support, but
Yeah.
Councilmember Dudisky.
Yeah, maybe not putting our logo on that letter, but if there's other ways we can support them. Did they sign on to our 522 letter?
no.
Okay. Because we did make a big deal of saying 522 is a regional
Yeah.
road, and then we're like, no, we're not going to help you.
No, it's not. They're not in our district, so
Yeah.
they're not even in the Sound Transit area.
Oh, yeah,
so
that makes sense.
So that wouldn't have helped at all.
So if there's another way we can, support them without maybe making it front and center, that would be good.
Yeah, without putting our logo on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to ask about the other cities on 522, Woodinville and Bothell. Lake Forest Park. Have they approached them to help as well, and are they?
Don't know. Mayor?
No, I don't think so. I think because we were the ones that were spearheading the 522 coalition,
Yeah.
I think they were contacting us.
Because if the others were willing to do it and we weren't, that wouldn't look good.
Okay. All right, one last thing. Looking to have a joint meeting with the school district board on February 29th. That's a Monday. And we would talk about issues that we're mutually interested in, and I'd like you to hear from them about the new mandates that they have to comply with, about class size and all-day K and things like that, and how that might affect the community. They also want to hear from us on what's going on in Kenmore, things like Lake Point and other developments. So I think it'd be a great meeting to have, and we might even be able to conduct a little city business afterwards, maybe. So any objections to having a meeting on the 29th of... Okay.
They were very responsive when we asked them about the Kenmore Junior High and Kenmore High School issues, and I think that it's a thumbs up for me.
Okay, and then I thought we could just set a tradition and have it annually on February 29th.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. That's not going to fly. All right.
Tradition.
Comments, initiatives. Councilmember Smith.
Oh, Rob, you're funny.
I got to break the mold here.
Okay, I have just two things. One, I received a letter a while ago from David Marin of the Arts of Kenmore, and he wanted to know if I would talk to you about, this is their program, their Kenmore Art Show program, and they have advertisements and stuff. He would like to suggest that the city, I'm reading his word is, I would suggest, so that's what I'm saying, a 1/2 page color advertisement for $500 or a 1/4 page advertisement for $250. And I think there's a couple of things worth noting. One is that we do buy an art piece every year from the Arts of Kenmore in sort of a means of support. And also I know we've done some things for the gallery outside chambers here in support. So I don't know the level of support on either of those, but I do know that those are two areas where we already do provide some support. On the program, I would be personally fine with a 1/4 page for $250, but I would just like to get an idea if that's something that you think is reasonable.
Councilmember Curtis.
I guess I'm not really in favor of it. It seems like mostly those are businesses promoting themselves, and I think we have other methods to promote our messages to our citizens. So I would rather spend, if we want to spend $250 or $500 more, I'd rather buy more art. And then we have something for the money we give.
Anybody else? Councilmember Sperry.
Well, Brent did mention this to me earlier, so I had a few minutes to think about it. And my first thought was, well, what are we advertising? You know, it's the Kenmore Art Show. They know it's in Kenmore. But then my second thought was the Spencer 68 might be really interested, so perhaps we could direct them that way to buy an ad or something like that, that they would be somebody maybe that have interest in that. So unless we can figure out a way to, or what it is we would be promoting, I mean, I don't know, the concerts, or I just don't know what exactly we would be, what the benefit would be other than just basically, buying an ad.
Councilmember Danuski.
Yeah, I guess I'm leaning kind of the same way as Councilmember Sperry, where maybe a 1/4 page would be okay if we had something we really wanted to advertise to that venue that we don't already advertise another way.
Deputy Mayor.
the purpose of advertising is to support the art show. And we support the art show in other ways. We publicize it in our newsletter, and we buy the art and support it in many other ways. I don't see that buying an ad in their brochure or their program is a reasonable function of the city of Kenmore, and so I wouldn't be in favor of it.
Okay, so I'll assume that's a no, since I heard 4 no's, and I will pass that on. I think you're right. I don't think it falls into the being a normal function when we do a lot of other things for them. On the same hand, I do think the Arts of Kenmore is an exceptional organization that really has done some amazing things in our community. So that's why I was supportive of it. The second thing, which unfortunately our city manager just stepped out because it has...
That was well timed.
Yes, I think he knew that. No, but it has to do with this idea of the concrete being recycled here in our city. And I found out about it over the weekend, that it was a potential, and I am very concerned about it. And I just hope that we make sure that we do whatever we can as a council to get as much of the facts from Rob's office and on our own to understand what exactly that entails. And I guess more than anything, I'd like to understand up front before all these decisions get made for us. And so he's not here, but I will talk to him later about it. And anybody else that has any information, I would love to know about it.
I can offer a couple words.
Yes?
I can't offer it, but he should be back in about 30 seconds.
Okay.
That this issue did come up at the staff level this afternoon during the meeting that I actually attended, and the staff is looking very closely at this. And actually, some of the staff have assignments already on this issue.
Okay. Well, that's...
And he might be able to add some more.
He did step out at the perfect time. So that's all for me, Mr. Mayor.
He planned it that way.
He did.
We're not going to let him get off the hook that easy, though. We'll come back to that when he comes back. Councilmember Sperry.
I do have one thing. I do concur with Councilmember Smith's concern about the potential for the old bridge coming here, and I'm glad to hear staff is working on it. But the one thing that I do have is the comment that was made tonight about Puget Sound air quality testifying against the Paulette bill. Perhaps, Mayor, when you get to your comments, you could clarify that. I would appreciate hearing more exactly what happened.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, is that what happened?
It was rather general comments against. They weren't really supportive of Paulette or his bill. I had brought up that we've even brought on our own people to help them because, they're so short-staffed. Mm-hmm. And I was really very surprised also to hear them somewhat in support of the industry.
Did you get any sense at all? Was it just they felt like it was, too many complaints, or was there any sense at all of where they were coming from?
I got the feeling that it just wasn't that important to them with the rest of their mission.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
Agree with it all, but
yeah.
Is this regarding Puget Sound Clean Air?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm real curious about that.
I've connected via email with their executive director, and we're trying to set up a time to meet so I can better understand where he's coming from.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, like I said, I got more that it really wasn't part of his mission to be worried about the odor part. There were more important fish to fry. Is kind of the gist that I got. So, yeah, I was rather disappointed to see them on that side. Councilmember Curtis.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Herbig.
So going to the concrete recycling issue that popped up, it reminded me that there was a bill that passed the legislature last session, House Bill 1695. Broad bipartisan support, unanimous in the House, unanimous in the Senate, And I remember it, I need to go back and review the tape, but I remember it going through the House Environment Committee, and I remember Representative Farrell asking, and I can't remember if it was somebody from the aggregate, like a lobbyist for the aggregate and concrete companies, or if it was somebody from the state agency. But I really seem to remember her asking a specific question about potential use at the Kenmore site, and the person saying that they did not think that was in the cards. Both Representative Farrell and Paulette, well, I'm just double checking here. Well, they both voted for it at the end of the day, and I know that there were discussions about the Kenmore plant during that. So I think it's worth looking at House Bill 1695 and
1695,
1695. It's passed last year, and you can, if you go to the Ledge website and search for a bill and put that in, if you go all the way at the bottom, you can watch the committee hearings. And I don't know, it went through House Environment and House Transportation, both of which Representative Farrell is on. So I don't know which of those meetings the discussion about the Kenmore site comes up, but it is in there somewhere. And I may, kind of go through these again, through the videos again sometime. But in general, the idea of recycling concrete is not a bad thing. It happening there is probably not the greatest, though. So. Okay.
And I don't know that, I've heard that the pontoons and that were sold, so I've not heard they're going to be cut up. But
Well, the pontoons have been sold. The question, or are being sold. The question is the roadway.
Right.
Because that is that's a whole different animal. So the pontoons are valuable.
Yeah, I thought they were more or less one unit they were selling.
No, the roadway is a completely separate thing from the pontoons that are mostly underwater. So.
All right. Councilmember Danuski. Oh, you got something, Alan, on this? No? No. Okay. Councilmember Danuski.
Nothing to add.
Deputy Mayor.
I have nothing tonight.
I've got a few things. I was down in Olympia a couple of times last week. Once on Representative Paulette's bill. I was also down there and met with a number of representative senators on St. Ed's. I've got a 7:30 meeting tomorrow morning, and then meetings throughout the day with other legislators, and also meeting tomorrow on House Bill 2667 on St. Ed's. And basically what that bill does is helps change the voting requirements from unanimous to simple majority, and also changes some other things on the way it is worded now, that it is a majority of the quorum can decide to approve a bill. And so what they are saying and what Parks is saying is that 4 people can show up for a meeting. There's 7 on the committee. 4 could show up and 3 vote and pass it, and therefore a minority would actually be passing something. So that's one of the concerns, and that's one of the things that's in the bill. The other thing is they're asking for a lease period of 80 years. And I know that they would be happier with less, but they're starting with 80 for wiggle room. So that is tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, I've got more people I'm meeting with on those bills, and also going to be at the Senate committee hearing on Senate Bill 6377, which does the same thing on the Senate side. So, and then looking out a little bit further on the 4th, I am going to be going to the governor's mansion for breakfast because of my involvement in being vice president in Sound Cities Association. So we get to go to breakfast at the governor's mansion. And then I'm going to meet some kids down there from the Pocock Foundation to talk about our boathouse and the boys in the boat. So I know Representative Paulette is looking to do something with the soundstage at Magnuson Park to try to get Boys in the Boat filmed here, where it all happened, versus Vancouver. So we're going to be certainly supporting Representative Paulette's efforts, and we're going to be promoting the Boys in the Vote in our own Kenmore way. I think that's it. So unless there's anything else to come before us, we're adjourned.